What's up, word warriors? Welcome to the next installment of the Alchemic scripting series. At this point, it's time to really tear into the book. We've got our outline. We've got all of, hopefully, our world building done in an easily accessible filing system of some kind that you've selected. We've got, hopefully, the last chapter and now the first chapter of this story written. So now what, right? The rest of this series is just going to be pointers along the way, because one thing you're going to find as a writer, you really are going to develop your own way of doing things. So although I'm instructing you here, I want you to find your own natural rhythm with your writing. Meaning, it should be inviting and fun. Anytime you come up with a process that starts feeling like it's weighing you down, that it's work, you may want to think about revising it a little bit. Because although writing is work, drawing a beautiful picture is work, it should be fun work, and you'll know the difference. So, such as, right now, I've moved where I'm writing. I'm not writing at my main computer here. I've got my laptop. It's fall. I can have all the windows open and I can look out while I'm writing. I'm actually sitting on the floor with pillows propped up. I've actually relocated my moving space, and I will do this until the book is finished. I was in the living room. I have my dining room table in the living room, and I was over there, and it got to the point where I just didn't want to sit at that table to write, and so I was avoiding writing. So my point in telling you this is your actual writing space is very important, and if you have more than one option for yourself, that would be great. A laptop is awesome. The other night I lit candles and I went out on the back deck and had a glass of wine while I was writing, and that was really inspiring. So that's kind of something to keep the creative juices flowing. Our next step is taking it one chapter at a time, and I can't stress this enough. You want to think of the whole, but that's why you have come up with your plot points and your outline. So basically what I do from this point on is I go one chapter at a time and I look at my plot point, meaning the action, the main action, whether it's internal or external, or a mixture of both. And then I design my setting, the characters that I'm going to introduce in that chapter to go around that particular point. This also gives the book a very organic feel to it. You don't want to overwhelm the reader. Say you've designed these 12 or 24 characters that you've developed. You don't want to shove them all in the reader's face all at once. You should meet these characters systematically where they fit within the story. Think organically. It should feel natural. It shouldn't be forced. The same thing with your settings. If you are writing a fantasy, sci-fi type of novel where you have built your own world, you want to slowly introduce these pieces to the reader. You don't want to give it to them all at once. It becomes confusing and clunky because now you're spending a lot of time explaining things to the reader, and you want to avoid that. You only want to layer in your explanations as needed. So think about this as you're writing. One way that I have learned to approach the first draft, because you're also going to find, just let go that first draft is going to be anything more than basically the skeleton. Or think of laying the foundation on a house or baking a cake. It's that first step, okay? This realization, this understanding really frees you, because what oftentimes happens, the writer will sit down to write, and you are so focused on writing right that you completely disconnect from the divine flow, the inspiration, you know, that pulse that we all call the inspiration, where it's almost like you're not even the one writing, because you're not. This energetic flow, when you're trying to make it right, you completely disconnect from that. So your first draft, your aim should be to plug into the pulse, the inspiration. You will refine and make the writing right later. So go ahead and get that in your mind as you sit down to write. This is just the inspiration. This is just the imprint. This is just the skeleton. The grammar doesn't need to be right. The punctuation doesn't need to be perfect. The words that I'm using can be changed, especially with the computer. Come on. I usually will write 1 to 3 chapters. My chapters run between 10 to 15 pages long each. I will usually write 1 to 3 chapters plugged in to the inspiration, the stream of consciousness that I'm talking about. I won't keep going, because one thing you will find is that ideas change as you start refining things, as you start going back in and now bringing in the mental process to perfect or make the writing right. You'll get a new idea, a new piece of inspiration will come to you. So I've learned that if I keep going with the inspiration, I may have dramatic changes to the story that now I have to edit all the way through. So I usually don't allow myself to get too far down the road before I go back, rewind. And I actually love each layer. I want you to think of a story in terms of layers. And as you're writing them, I want you to think of them as individual layers that you're going to be working on. So, layer number 1, we're working from inspiration, but I want you writing dialogue. The action. This is where the action of the story, the interaction between the characters is really going to come out. Almost think of it as a movie script, if you will. You know, when you read a movie script, if you've ever had the privilege of reading one, as I have, or a play, it's just dialogue with, you know, directions in there of what the characters are doing, but it's not clunked up with a description, because it's a movie, it's a script. Those things are going to be acted out. So I want you to think of that first layer as a script, and you are just getting into the minds and the action of the story. You may have some basic, you know, he picked the cup up or whatever, but you don't need to get into description of the cup. What kind of cup? Okay, that's going to be a different layer. What I have found that this does, it allows me to get into the pulse of the story. It's very exciting. This is where the excitement of the story is. And so it sucks me in, and it allows me to just focus on the characters. Another thing I want you to do is, in this first layer, see if you can't write the dialogue without a lot of tags. Donald said, Karen laughed. I want you to develop a voice for each one of your characters, meaning the way that their language and the way that they speak in the dialogue, the character knows who they are. If you can do this without the tags, you're going to add the tags later. I don't like a lot of tags, but you can add them. You're going to need to, so there's no confusion. But for you to develop the voice of your characters, it will just make the work so much stronger. Once I get layer 1 written of my first, 1, 2, 3 chapters, I then go back and I add my descriptions in. My action descriptions. He's walking towards the door, he's opening the car door, they're driving. What action is going on? What is your character looking at? What are the smells? You want to hit on all of the senses. The next layer is going to be the internal dialogue that your main character is having. especially if you're writing a first-person story, you're going to have a lot of inner thoughts that are going on. But you don't want more inner thoughts than you have language going on outside. So, dialogue going on outside in the external world. You have to be very careful of this when writing a first-person story, in my opinion. When a book becomes too much inside the character's head, you've lost touch with the immediate action of the story. So we've written our dialogue, our external dialogue between our characters. Then we go back and we're adding our descriptions, our action description. Maybe we want to, what kind of car are they driving? You know, think with your descriptions also, less is more. Don't go on and on and on about the description of the tree. Give me a specific tree. Is it a fir? Is it an oak? Is it a pine? Is it a cherry blossom? Same thing with every thing that you describe. Try to be as concise and right to the point, so that in as few words as possible, you get the point across. I don't know about you, and everyone enjoys different types of writing, so this is just my opinion, but nothing annoys me more than when I get pulled out of the meat, the pulse of the story, to hear some lengthy description that although it is beautiful and it shows the writer's, brilliance in prose, it really just takes me out of the story. And I try to avoid this at all costs. I think I may write very basic. I really like the reader to just keep on going. I try to leave out the parts that I skip as the reader in a book. A lot of times I'll allow myself to write it and then I just cut it out. I'll edit it down. So we've written our descriptions. We go back in and we write our internal dialogue. Now here is where you want to think about your genre, because there's another layer there. If you are a fantasy or a sci-fi writer, your world building needs to come in after your descriptions, and I want you to piece your world building in very organically and where it's needed. You do not want to shove it all in the reader's face all at one time. If you are writing romance, that's a whole other level that needs to be considered. Romance is very interesting. I have that element in my stories, and when it's overdone, it's nauseating, and it can pull the reader again out of maybe a lot of the other things that you have going on. If you're writing just strictly romance, I would still treat this as its own level in the story, because you need a push and a pull. There needs to be moments where the characters are not engaged romantically and there's tension between them, so that it makes when they come together more intense. Then I go through for what I call a polish, where I have addressed each one of the levels for my particular story. I have written them in, one layer at a time. And then I go through and I look for consistency. This is where I start paying attention more to my formatting and my grammar. Switching words out, busting out the thesaurus, looking for unique ways to describe things. I think you also find a rhythm at this point, adding character to the story, making sure that there is a believability there. Is there humor in your story? I love humor. I love having really intense, dramatic moments with bits of humor. Now, too much humor can kill it for me. If it's a serious story and the author just keeps going to humor, it really will kill it for me. So again, it's all a matter of taste, but being able to work those levels like in a song and playing them off each other. So maybe if you've got a lull in a chapter of an external conflict going on, you up the ante on the romance, but you're constantly playing with the emotions of the reader. This is the way to keep them engaged. So get cracking on that novel. I think that you now have the full disclosure on how to approach this in a way that isn't overwhelming. And don't wait to be inspired. You create the inspiration. You'll wait forever that way. Actually, the more you wait around to be inspired, the less inspired you'll be. The more you think about writing, the less you actually write. Just make it playful. Make your writing space fun. At first, get out of your head. Plug in. Let go of it being perfect. Nobody writes a perfect book their first shot out. But if you're willing to put in the time and you're implementing all of the tools that I've given you, you're definitely going to write something worth reading. And you're going to love the feeling of satisfaction that you get while you're doing it. The process it's so exhilarating. But as you watch it manifest right in front of you, I'm actually on chapter 14 of my novel, and it's just the most amazing experience. I absolutely love this body of work and can't wait to share it with you all. So word warriors, get to cracking on those books and be on the lookout for the next inspired thought that I have to share with you to help you along this process. Again, I'm open to individual needs in reference to feedback, and you can contact me at Amy Blackford at live.com. AMIBLACKFORD at live.com. So until then, happy writing. Namaste.